Good afternoon and welcome to Lowell Park for Game 2 of the Western Division Finals between the Falmouth Commodores and the Cotuit Kettleers. My name's Jacob Cohen alongside Caleb Kaufman, and Ben Gainsborough, Will Krause, and Josh Rothstein will be joining us soon on this special extended edition of the Kettleers playoff pregame show. But first, Caleb and I are going to recap how these two teams got to this matchup. So first, to give you a little bit of info on the Falmouth Commodores, the Bourne Braves took them to 3 games in the Round 1 series, 2 pretty close games in Game 1 and Game 2, but Falmouth finally pulled ahead, scoring a lot of runs for a Game 3 win to clinch a berth in the second round, winning 8-2. And compared to Cotuit in those 3 games, they were not nearly as offensively charged. And that's because while Falmouth was getting people on base, they were not bringing them around to score. They only had 4 extra base hits in the first round. Cotuit had 17. They only worked 7 walks. Cotuit worked 21. So it was either the Falmouth batters are getting out or they're getting on base, not really bringing a lot of runs around. And we saw that in Game 1 on Monday, too. It was a shutout win for Cotuit. So that's something they're going to need to improve today if they want to force a Game 3 tomorrow. In addition, the team hit .276 in the series, and you saw a few names drop from the regular season curve, namely Hayden Cantrell and Trey Cruz. Their batting averages dipped in that series compared to where they were at in the regular season. But you saw a few players rise to the occasion, showing an affinity for crunch time in the playoffs, and that would be Jackson Coots and Blake Dunn. They trended upwards a huge amount, both hitting over .350 in the first round, both posting on base percentage of over .400. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Zach DeLoach. He's just as hot as he was in the regular season, comparable to our own Nick Gonzalez. He's leading his team in playoff batting average as he did in the regular season at .417, so pretty incredible from DeLoach. And as I said, the Commodores didn't bring a lot of runs around, but while the offense didn't light up the diamond, they could fall back on their pitching. They had an incredible starting rotation throughout the regular season. I mean, how else do you win 11 straight? It's unbelievable, really. And that really showed in Round 1. The pitching staff only gave up 7 runs in those 3 games. 4 of them were earned. They held Bourne to a 168 team batting average and a 238 on-base percentage. So, because of that, Falmouth was able to outpace them a little bit and fall back on the good pitching. In addition, the starting core in particular, they went 16 2/3, only gave up 2 earned runs between the 3 pitchers who started in those games. And especially one starter of note is the ace, Carmen Mlodzinski. In Game 1 of that series, he went 5 shutout innings. So if Falmouth is able to win today and force a Game 3 tomorrow, you can bet that he'll most likely be on the bump to try to take the Commodores into the Cape League final. So that's all I have for the Falmouth Commodores. I'm going to throw it over to Caleb now for a little bit about how your Cotuit Kettleers got here.
For the Kettleers, they got to the second round on the backs of offense, and a little bit more offense from Cotuit. Their series also went 3 games against Wareham Gatemen as they won 2-1 in the series. And Game 1 of the playoffs kind of started as a disaster for the Kettleers. Jackson Wolf couldn't get out of the first inning after he strained his back, giving up 6 runs to start. But that was the worst it got for the Kettleers pretty much in the first round. Everything else seemed to be smooth sailing, as in Game 1, Chris Holcomb with his signature swag, a common collective player. He came in and shut the door, going 4 shutout innings, only allowing 2 walks, and bought time for the Kettleers to come back into that game and hold out until the 3rd and 4th inning, where they combined for 7 runs in those 2 innings, got all the way back in the game, actually took the lead surprisingly, and was able to kind of revitalize what looked like kind of a dud of a game and have some momentum going into Game 2. Even though Kyle Nicholas came in, he also pitched outstanding, one of his best performances since early in the season, where he was untouchable for the first couple outings in the Cape League. He went 3 innings. He was the tough luck loser, giving up a couple bloop singles, and then ended up losing in the 10th inning in extras. But overall, the comeback for the Kettleers really gave them energy to come out for the second game, which was all Cotuit. You kind of could tell from the very beginning of that game, even before the game even started, Nick Gonzalez was awarded the MVP award in the Cape League. Very well deserved by him. The players were relaxed. They were while still being locked in during pregame, and it was a rout. Cotuit came out and won 22-2. Every starting batter got on base that game. Araj Anu went 3 for 5 in the game with 5 RBIs. And then the game is an outstanding offensive game when Dante Williams goes 3 for 6 with 3 RBIs, and everyone forgot about it. Usually you go 3 for 6 with 3 RBIs, you're the headline. Instead, when you're forgotten in that case, the rest of your offense also really did well. And the other story in Game 2 was Sean Sullivan, the freshman out of Cal Berkeley. He looked like he was a senior ready to go, throwing 5 shutout innings with 6 strikeouts. He looked like the ace he's always been all season for the Kettleers. And then that momentum from the 22-2 win really transitioned into Game 3, where all I could say was it was a professional game by the Kettleers. It was a bullpen-esque game with Nick Jones starting, and then they went to the bullpen. But the true star of Game 3 was Casey Schmidt. He came in, locked it down for 5 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts. He was pretty much untouchable. His fastball was getting over. His splitter was having batters out in front. And Coach Roberts had faith in him, and after the game was like, there was no one else I would have thought to put in as the closer to close out the series. And his faith was well-deserved in Casey Schmidt as he came through. And as I said before the Gateman series, the offense all season for the Kettleers had been there. We're the number 2 team in runs on offense. And the question would be, would the pitching be able to keep up with the offense? And so far in the playoffs, it has. The one game it didn't in Game 1 where they gave up 6 in the early was their only loss. And still the offense almost pulled them out of that deep hole start the game. And since then, they put up 22, 4-1 victory in Wareham, and then a 5-0 shutout in Falmouth yesterday. So the offense has been there, and the pitching has backed them up, and that's why they seem to be on a good roll right now. And then to talk about this upcoming series with Falmouth and the game today, we have Will Kraus.
The Cotuit Kettleers defeated the Falmouth Commodores in Game 1 by a score of 5-0 a couple of days ago. Cotuit had a really big breakout inning in the second inning when they scored 3 runs off the bat of Parker Chavers, Adam Oviedo, and the feet of Dante Williams. Parker Chavers hit a liner to shortstop that was ruled an error as the shortstop muffed it, but that put Cotuit up 1-0, scoring Casey Schmidt all the way from second. And then Adam Oviedo had a big sac fly later in the inning that scored Colton Kessler. And then Dante Williams really created a run for the 3rd run of the inning. He stole third base and then on a wild pitch ended up scoring. Coach Roberts was very complimentary of Williams' performance after the game. Then in the next inning, Adam Oviedo would add his 2nd RBI with a single to left field. And then finally in the 6th inning, Nick Gonzalez on a hit and run with Dante Williams at second, line one to center field that made the game 5-0. But the real story, the real stars of the game were Trey Holland and Bo Hofstra for the Kettleers on the mound. They were terrific, throwing a shutout, and Trey Holland threw 6 scoreless innings. Coach Roberts was very complimentary of him as well, saying that he really mixed up his speeds on his secondary pitches, keeping the Falmouth Commodores off balance throughout the night before he left to a standing ovation. It was really a special moment on the Cotuit sideline. The entire fans were on their feet for Holland, along with his teammates. They came out of the dugout to celebrate with him. It was really a cool moment. And then Hofstra came in that very inning, the 7th inning, with 1 runner on and no outs, and he got a big double play on a slider. Coach Roberts said he really kept the ball down in the zone and that Bo really wanted to go out there to come in for the Kettleers. He'd been waiting for Coach Roberts to tell him to go get him all season long, and Bo Hofstra went out there and got him, throwing 3 scoreless innings, giving Cotuit the Game 1 win. Looking forward to today. Talking about the starters tonight is Josh Rothstein along with Ben Gainsborough talking about today's game.
Thanks, Will. I'm Ben, and this is Josh Rothstein, and we're here talking about today's game. The key for the Kettleers looking ahead to this game is the pitching staff. The pitching staff that was so inconsistent from game to game during the regular season, and then we turned the page, we got past Game 1, and they're suddenly shutting out Falmouth at Falmouth's home stadium, which wasn't done the entire regular season. The key for Cotuit's pitching staff is to limit the walks. When Cotuit allows the walks, that's when we've seen the damage done. That's what happened in Game 1 of the playoffs. Walked a couple guys, there was a hit, and before you know it, 6 runs scored. When Cotuit's throwing strikes, as they did last game, they're very good. And when they're throwing strikes and limiting those runs and limiting those walks, usually the offense is good enough to dig them out of holes, as we saw for the first 4 games of the playoffs. Looking at Falmouth, this is a very deep and very talented offensive team. From my opinion, I don't think there's a deeper 1-9 team that Mike Roberts alludes to a lot, getting contact, getting power from 1 through 9 in the batting order, than Falmouth. Their 9-hitter all season has been Austin Maisel of Holy Cross, and he's hitting he hit over 350 in the regular season. So if he's hitting 9th and then he can turn it over to Hayden Cantrell, who also hit over 300 during the regular season, that's a pretty good way to start. For Falmouth to really score runs, though, it's those big three. Hayden Cantrell, the leadoff guy from Louisiana Lafayette. Zach DeLoach, as we know, he was the best hitter average-wise during the regular season. And then Trey Cruz from Rice is a guy with a ton of pop, a guy who brings energy to this team. He hit the 3-run home run that kind of elevated them past Bourne in that Game 3. So they really need talent from them in particular, but really it's that 1 through 9 that Falmouth needs to really get going to win ball games. And to talk about the pitching matchup today, we have Josh.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And the scheduled pitching matchup today is Chris Gonzalez for Falmouth and Jackson Wolf for Cotuit. Chris Gonzalez is a junior out of Stetson. He hasn't appeared in these playoffs yet. His last appearance was actually against the Kettleers, a July 31st doubleheader. He pitched in Game 2, gave up 3 earned runs in 3 innings, and really it's been a bit of a struggle for Gonzalez this season. He's 2-4 with a 5.60 ERA. He's made 8 starts, 24 strikeouts, just 9 walks, so he does put it over the plate, but sometimes it's a little bit too good as opponents are hitting 286 off him this season. His best start of the season came July 20th versus Orleans. He threw 6 shutout innings in a winning effort, and he has yet to throw in the playoffs, as he mentioned. Meanwhile, we've talked about Jackson Wolf throughout the show. He struggled. There was no kidding about that. He struggled in Wareham in Game 1. He had a little bit of back discomfort going into the game. He got the first out and thought, I'm feeling better, everything might come to me, and it really didn't. And after 2/3 of an inning, he and Coach Roberts had seen enough. The back was acting up, and Coach Roberts had to get him out of the game to either preserve him for a future game and just to keep the Kettleers in the game, which eventually they were able to fight back and just coming up short. Jacksonville, other than that, however, has been rather pretty good for Cotuit. He pitched to a 3.03 ERA in the regular season. Of course, that went up considerably with the playoff start at Wareham, but besides that start, he's been very good. In 26 2/3 innings, he has 27 strikeouts. And just 11 walks. The 11 walks, though, are really a bit of a misleading stat because 6 of them came in one start at Chatham. So he does throw strikes, and Falmouth does have a powerful lineup, so it's going to be a putting the ball in play type of afternoon, at least for the Kettleers on defense. So the defense will have to come through. Jacksonville's best start of the season came at Wareham. It was a 1-0 loss, a really defensive and pitching game. He pitched 5 shutout innings, and Cotuit would end up to lose 1-0. No fault, though, to Jackson Wolves. He hasn't faced Falmouth this season, but as Ben mentioned, the Cotuit staff, really since the first inning at Wareham, has been lights out. 35 2/3 innings, just the 4 earned runs, and 7 walks, which is the fewest of any of the remaining teams. And it's a real contrast to the regular season, as Hyannis was the only team that had more walks issued during the regular season. So for more on this afternoon's game, we'll send it upstairs to our commentators, Sam Niederman and Arm Layton.